Hi, I'm Sandy Stewart. I'm speaking to you because I worked at the Home Savings on the corner of Sunset and Vine, starting in November 1969. I can remember the date, November 24th, because it was an important date. And I worked at that office for my first 4 years of a 30-year career at Home Savings. I started at the bottom as a teller trainee. I like to say this because my friends today appreciate it. I'm a farm girl from Central California, from the Central Valley, and found myself moving to LA in 1969, and that was my first job. I have to say, walking into that office, I always wanted to work at a bank because in my small farm town of Parlier, California, the most prestigious job in the little town was working at the bank. So when I moved to LA and needed my first job, I applied at kind of randomly because I didn't know what I was doing at Home Savings, and I got the job. And again, it's a long story because I ended up being there for 30 years, and that was my main career of my life. Although I'm working again, but that was my main career. Walking into that office, again, being a farm girl, it was truly amazing. I had never seen anything like it. I was relatively new to LA, so I didn't know at that moment how special it was because I didn't know there weren't a lot of other things like that, but there weren't. It was so substantial. This is what, throughout my career at Home Savings, customers always commented on, not only there, but in other locations, is they liked the idea of having their money at Home Savings because it seemed so substantial and strong and safe. And that was, very important to clients. Walking into a marble building, it looked solid marble with all the gold trim. And in the case of the Hollywood branch, which is near and dear to my heart and many other employees of Home Savings, because it was kind of the centerpiece of the whole company. It was always the main centerpiece because the story was that Howard Amundsen himself, who had passed away just a year before I started, had focused all his energies on creating a real showplace in Hollywood on that corner that he selected and bought. And as we know, it's a historic location, the corner of Sunset and Vine. I think the NBC building had been gone for just a few years. I don't recall, but probably, I think I read somewhere from the early 60s, they moved to Burbank. But even as a young employee there, when we would open the mail in the morning that came in, a lot of the mail would be addressed to NBC or directly to Bob Hope. It would be addressed to Bob Hope, 1500 North Vine, because I guess people saw that address somewhere. There was no internet, so they saw it somewhere. And so we knew that we were in a historic place. But once, and again, I'm only going by stories that were told to me, once Howard Amundsen decided on that location, hired a very specific architect to do something very special in that location, we knew that it was just really something special. He was apparently involved with all the design, working with Millard Sheets, and wanted it to reflect the community, as he did with other branches in other communities, but not like this one. This was Hollywood. So it was something very, very special. So again, walking in, seeing the stained glass when you come in the back doors from the parking lot, and seeing at that point, I was there so early in the history of the building. Again, it was opened 1 year before I started, that the Millard Sheets mural on the wall that was out to the front of the building onto Sunset and Vine had not even been installed yet. It was still in the works. And so there was a chalk drawing of the Squaw Man on that interior wall. And when I first started, I thought, well, that's interesting, but you can't really see what it is very well because it was chalk. But then I was actually there, I would say 6 months into my tenure there, when Millard Sheets himself came in for the installation, and they hung the mural like wallpaper, large strips of wallpaper on that wall. And he he directed the whole thing and orchestrated it, and he had artisans making sure it all matched up, and of course it just changed the entire interior look of the building once the real mural was up. It was up for many years. We were instructed no furniture should ever go up against that wall. Like in those days, because there weren't even ATMs, people would queue up, they would line up in long lines, they'd be waiting to be served, but we could never put a chair in front of that mural. Any furniture could not be obstructing the mural, and it never did as long as I was there. I think it did later, but not while I was there. In addition to all of our customers, who were basically just local people from the neighborhood or people who worked in the area, we would have tourists stop in because they had heard about it or read about it, or I trust it was probably even in tour books to stop by and look at it because it was a work of art. And so we had any number of different types of people from different places coming in, and it was always just wonderful. And they would ask us questions, and what did we know? We were young employees, but we would say whatever we were told. And in addition to the building itself, there was the fabulous, which attracted many people on the corner, the fabulous fountain with the sculpture of the Flight of Europa, which at that time they used to brag it cost like, $500,000, which, today, who knows what it would be, because it's still magnificent. The fountain was running when I was there. It was running for a number of years after, but back in those days, we had hippies, we used to call them hippies, and they would come and bathe in the fountain, and, sometimes there'd be soap bubbles in there, and there was always something interesting going on. We had the hippie types. I was a banker, so I could say they were hippie types. We had hippie types because not only was that a very popular Hollywood location, but the original production of Hair, the musical Hair, was at the Aquarius Theater across the street from us on Sunset. So there would always be hippies hanging around there. That's the way it was. So some years later, after I left, I know that they stopped the fountain out there because they would then have, some homeless or other people hanging around the fountain. So as far as I know, it hasn't had water in it for a very, very long time. But it was quite magnificent. A couple of things that I recalled, and I wish I could remember the exact names, but I don't. It's too long, and I can't find anything related to this. When we first communicated, I mentioned I don't have a lot of contacts, and we didn't take pictures of everything in our lives in those days like we do today. So I have very few actual photos, except a few with maybe a friend or two. I pulled one out. Not that you can see much of it, but this is still my best friend. And we were there in 1972 taking a picture in front of the stained glass. So that's my 1972 picture with my good friend that I still see every other month, and we go shopping. But anyway, getting back to just not being able to recall everything, in the basement of this building, and we were, again, just stories, hearsay, we don't know. I don't have pictures. I thought I did, but I can't find anything good that I can actually put my hands on. I've moved around a lot also in 50 years. But we were told that because of Howard Amundsen's affiliations with certain organizations, and he was, of course, such a huge supporter of the arts, which is why he made this, I assume, one of the artistic masterpieces of the city, is that he had connections with different organizations. And in the basement, there was a large basement. If I'm not mistaken, it was larger than than the footprint of the building itself. So it spread out even further underground, as I recall. Our lunchroom was down there, which was a huge lunchroom for today's world. It was a very large lunchroom. And but there were two other distinct spaces that were offered, I was told, free of charge to a couple of organizations that he had connections or friends that were associated with. One of them was you're going to laugh, one of them was a magician's museum and performance space. And it had some name like the Magicians Association. I don't know what it was, but it was quite elaborate in that it had a small version of a wax museum with the various magicians in the past. Like there was a wax figure of like Houdini in a little tuxedo, you know, with chains and things, and people could walk through there. It wasn't open to the public. It was quite private, and you could walk through there, and there would be little placards saying what the scene was, and there would be all different magicians, most of whom I'd never heard of, but we've all heard of Houdini. And in addition to that, there was a good sized theater for performances. And this association, this Magicians Association, would come in on evenings or weekends and actually do small performances for their small elite group. There were actually red velvet theater seats, a red velvet curtain with gold trim, and it was a whole theater and space for people, magicians, to meet. So that was interesting. And then there was another space called some sort of Radio Broadcasters Association, which we couldn't go into. It was very private and elite for whoever went in there. And it had apparently very early radio equipment that was used by this Radio Broadcasters Association. So that's just interesting. The public would have never known these things because they were both elite private organizations, but we were aware they were down there. So that is kind of interesting, I think, that people wouldn't have known. Both of those organizations moved out, I think, well before the acquisition of Washington Mutual, and relocated somewhere else or closed down. I don't know what happened to them, but it was very interesting for us as employees. And because the company obviously knew about these spaces, not only would they often have big company-wide events at the branch, because everyone from all different branches around the area would want to come to the Hollywood branch. They'd maybe never been there, or it was just exciting to come to Hollywood. So we would have events there, and very often that magicians area in particular would be opened up for these events. And I'm talking about recognition events for employees from the area and that sort of thing. There was a very elaborate one there in 1986, I remember, where they bussed in people from all around the area and flew in people from out-of-state branches, because we had branched out of state by that point, and they all dressed up and came to an event there at the Hollywood branch called The Best of the Best, and the employees got to go there and see it, and they opened up the Magicians Theater, and they had magicians down there. And Home Savings was always very, at least internally, we knew, very well known for bringing in like old-time celebrities into these events. So I remember being there and sitting at the same table with Dorothy Lamour. So that was funny. But they would bring in people that, because we had, I would have to say, a older clientele, because those were the people most likely to want the safety and security of a well-known, solid Los Angeles-based bank. So we would have people like David Nelson or the Lennon sisters, and like I said, Dorothy Lamour, an odd assortment of older celebrities that clients and even employees would be very excited about seeing. So that was that part of it. I think I had mentioned that I absconded with this from the branch one time. I don't think it was while I was working there for those first 4 years. I was also the regional manager there after I had been promoted a few times in the mid to late 80s. And I was thrilled, of course, having started there, to come back as the regional manager for that branch and the territory. But one of the manager who was there said, "Oh, we found these old booklets in a drawer." There were like 3 of them. And I said, "Well, you know what? I'm going to take one. I'm in charge. Who says I can't?" And I'm so glad I did, because who knows where the others are. But this is called From Oranges to Oscars. And it was the PR piece, I assume, for when the branch was opened. And it starts with, the pictures of the orange groves, and then an aerial shot of NBC when it was there. And then it goes on to have a picture of Howard Amundsen with plans in front of him, as if he was planning it. And pictures of celebrities who were radio and TV early celebrities. But there's one line in here that I especially like. It talks about how he chose this property on the corner of Sunset and Vine, and he purchased it himself. And he said he wanted it to be an exciting and enduring tribute to the great stars and the great traditions of the movie capital. And then in quotes, Mr. Amundsen said, civic leaders have expressed Hollywood's need for such a monument. I thought that was kind of significant for what we're talking about today. So by providing a truly appropriate landmark with no cost to the taxpayer, we can show our gratitude to a wonderful community which has been so nice to Home Savings. So that's Howard Amundsen saying that. So it's a lovely booklet. It shows pictures of the various artwork, because there's mosaics on the outside too. It talks about the difficulty in creating the mosaics and having them look like these original movies from the Golden Age. There's the Flight of Europa and how they brought it here and how much they paid for it. The mosaics done by a protege of Millard Sheets. There's a picture of the whole mosaic. I'm sorry, stained glass. And then it just ends with Millard Sheets working on the Squaw Man. You can see Millard Sheets there with his paints. So I'm just glad that I took it, because I don't know if there are any others that anyone has. So I don't know how much more you want to hear from me. I could go on for a long time.